February's Datamines got buffed, and they look really interesting. The Season Pass card is Star-Lord Master of the Sun, a 4/5 with an on-reveal that sort of combines Warlock and Sunspot. The on-reveal says, when you play this card for each turn you have ended without spending all of your energy, get +1 power and +1 energy next turn. What I want to know, first of all, is does this count the turn that it's played on? Because if it does, what you're looking at is potentially a turn 5, let's say 4/9, 4/10, +4/+5 energy. That kind of stuff seems very compelling for what High Evolutionary is trying to do as a deck. But more than that, it could be compelling for a wide variety of things. I just think High Evo is sort of the most obvious spot where you already want to be skipping turns. What's interesting about the various forms of turn skip decks is that they tend to fall into a couple of different categories. The first is I want to skip a bunch of energy on one turn. This is She-Hulk and Warlock. And the second is I want to skip a little bit of energy on a bunch of turns. And that is what this card and the High Evolutionary Cyclops, Misty Knight, etc. seem to fall into. The question is, will there be a good synergy between these two types of energy skipping decks? My instinct is that this one fits a lot more with the High Evo style, but I'm not sure High Evo style is necessarily going to be strong enough to have the amount of points needed to compete. When I look at this card, though, what I see is effectively a 4/9 that lets me play a good tech card and then also a High Evo Hulk on the final turn of the game. That seems like the floor. That's what I'm doing with this card. I am using it in order to play Hulk Shadow King or something along those lines. The problem is, I don't think this deck really wants to be a Shadow King deck. Like, it's High Evolutionary. That's all about some green power. Everything you play has green power. So maybe there's a more combo style thing we can do here. Like, what if we played this on turn 5 and then used a Superior Spider-Man, or not Superior Spider-Man, a Symbiote Spider-Man, to make it happen twice? Is that the kind of thing that we'd be interested in? Is there more upside to that than, say, Fallen One in a deck that very often skips, let's say, turn 1, turn 2, and a couple other things? Could this be backup Fallen One in a Fallen One combo deck? I think that kind of stuff is also pretty interesting. What you do with that energy really matters. So at baseline, I think this has a baseline application of it will go in High Evo, it will make High Evo better. We can kind of just sort of write that in and say this is what will happen with the card. What we can't say is it will make High Evo good enough to be a meta level deck. It might. It seems pretty strong, honestly, but we don't know that. So other places it might fit, the Man-Spider combo decks seem to be the decks that want having extra energy the most. Those decks care extremely deeply about just having a bunch of energy to make some amount of large men and then copy them with Taskmaster. So having something that can give you, let's say, I don't know, let's say you skip turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4 you play Symbiote Spider-Man, turn 5 you play this. That's 8 energy, I think. Like, assuming it works the way we want it to work with the other turn, the turn it gets played on counting, I can very easily see that being a very big guy, and then you have that very big guy, and you play Man-Spider on that very big guy, and then you Taskmaster the Man-Spider, and I can see that being a thing I would want to do with the card. Those are sort of the spaces I see this card existing in. There's the obvious space, which is High Evolutionary, and then there's the I would like a bunch of energy space, and I think Man-Spider probably occupies that one. Magus is a 3/5 that I find kind of confusing. This card says activate, copy the text of a card in your deck equal to your unspent energy. So where the cost is equal to that. The reason I find this confusing is that there are a couple of interactions with this that I worry are going to be pretty awkward and bad. Interaction number 1 is, based on everything I know, if you activate a card that then copies another activate, you won't be able to activate that second card. And I know this from Symbiote Spider-Man. So this card will not work with other things that you would want to copy if those things are activates. The second is, I don't know how this card works with on-reveals. My instinct is the card didn't reveal that turn, so why would it on-reveal? But that seems crazy because the Silver Surfer First Steps has the same text and does work with on-reveals. But if this card does work with on reveals, am I just underrating how good it is? Because like I look at this card and I'm like, if this works with on reveals, is this not just like the best card in the game? I am very confused by what this card actually is. But if it works with honor reveals, this card is just 3/5. It sits on the board, and then whatever copy of the card that makes your deck work you want, you just have that, right? That's really strong. That's a really powerful thing to do. If it works with on reveals, and I think based on Silver Surfer First Steps, it would seem to imply that it does, this card seems kind of bananas good as long as you build your deck in the right way. And if it doesn't work with on reveals, at a bare minimum, this card is the single greatest like onslaught and or tribunal card anyone has ever made. It's just a 3/5. Like, you know those decks play Iron Lad, right? This is like if you could pick and choose what your Iron Lad got. Like, yeah, okay, I invested 3 energy. All I gotta do is skip the next turn and this card turns into Living Tribunal? I don't know. Maybe I'm underrating it. Maybe I'm off base. But between this and the previous card that we talked about, I feel like there's just gotta be some kind of stupid-ass Man-Spider thing to do. I don't know what that stupid-ass Man-Spider thing is, but if this works with on reveals, I'm doing something really dumb with Man-Spider. This is going to be something extremely dumb. I am going to go copy my Man-Spider. I am going to go copy my Taskmaster. I am doing nothing but stupid things with this. I might even copy a Hulkbuster or skip it on 1 and copy an Agony to make this work. Like, I gotta say, I think that if this card works with on reveals, it is a massive consistency boost to the aforementioned Man-Spider combo deck. If it doesn't work with on reveals, I think it is a massive consistency boost to every single ongoing style combo deck. For example, it's an Iron Man. If you skip 5, that seems pretty good to me. All of this stuff strikes me as a card that is very powerful, but does have a little bit of a whiff of maybe being potential man. That's not to say that I don't think this card is completely insane, but I do think that there are a lot of cards that come out and you're like, wow, look at all of these possibilities. And then you try all those possibilities and it's like, okay, this is fine. And then you look at the card and you're like, but look, in the future, they'll make more cards that have more possibilities for this card. So it's gotta be worth it. And I think that rarely actually happens unless they do balance changes to the card. So while I do think that this card strikes me as quite powerful, I am a little bit unclear on whether or not on reveals even work with this card. I am a little bit unclear on just generally, I don't think I'm unclear on activates. I'm pretty sure activates just don't work based on how the game currently functions. But generally speaking, at a minimum, this card seems like a really good inclusion in whatever onslaught style combo deck you're doing, whatever kind of Living Tribunal kind of combo deck you're doing. That feels like the floor for this card. Moondragon, a 2/2 with an end of turn ability that gives it +2 power if you played 1 card and used all your energy on it. My instinct is that this will not work with something like Sunspot, for example. It's not like it's actually eating your energy per se, but what I do think is that this card strikes me as like slightly worse Chamber. Maybe Chamber for Doom 2099 decks would be the right way to put it, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad spot for a card to be in. It's also like, okay, you talk about Chamber for Doom 2099 decks, maybe you have your Chamber for Doom 2099 decks, but Doom 2099 has ongoing bots that come out of it and an end of turn on itself. This is another end of turn. Maybe we start moving towards Doom 2099 Aurora decks. That seems entirely possible. I think that a lot of the way this card is put together is pretty good design. Largely, I think more archetypes need Morbiuses, just cards that do things. I do wish this wasn't yet another card that is interesting and does stuff that gets like absolutely kicked in the face by Shadow King, but I also think Shadow King is likely to be a pretty bad card against the deck that this goes in, so it probably just balances out, just something worth mentioning. Largely, I think this is a very solid and reasonable card that I don't know if it's going to get over the edge into playability, but it does seem pretty interesting and pretty compelling in a very limited space. It's the Morbius of Doom 2099 decks. It's really that simple. Drax, Avatar of Life, end of turn, +3 power. If your opponent played a card with greater power this turn, move to that card's location if it would mean that you're winning that location. I think this guy is quite good. I think this is just basically a big enough guy that you're going to be very happy with having a 310 that does what he does. I think you are just going to be extremely happy about any game where this card is on the board early. It's not going to be the world's most insane card. Like, there are definitely going to be situations where he simply gets outpowered. Any combo deck, you are probably not getting a lot out of this. But this guy, to me, looks like a bit of a mid-range mirror breaker, where you can just put him on the board, let him do his thing, and if your positioning is bad, or you lose a 50-50 on your Scarlet Spider roll, or any of the number of things that can happen in a mid-range mirror, he will just straight up save you. This is also a really powerful card against the ramp deck. It is unbelievably powerful to have a card that is going to be A, as big as this guy is going to be, and B, as able to redistribute his power as this guy is going to be. I would argue that the number one effect this guy is going to have is putting ramp in an actual chokehold. This guy is going to be a monster in those matchups. I think that is mostly what his profile is, though. He's really good against ramp, which is a very big guy face-up deck, and isn't really one that can attack all three locations profitably, and a lot worse against anything going exponential or doing stuff that's really stupid. But, like, if this card were out right now, I would probably be playing him in shoutout decks, because what I want to do with this card is just to make sure that my power concentration is good enough to make sure that I win the lanes that are actually important in the game. And this guy would do that. I think that he would be a card that goes in decks right now. Major victory in Series 4 seems to be tied to a limited time game mode. This is one of those cards where you just look at it and you're like, oh yeah, they probably should have made a card that did this a while ago. I don't think this is a card that's going to see any kind of real metagame play. 3-4, add two characters from the Guardians crew to your hand, which are the base Guardians, so going from 1 to 5, Rocket, Star-Lord, good lord, Groot, Drax, Gamora. Okay, I passed the test. That's what these cards are going to be. I think that it would almost certainly be a better card if it only added the cheap ones, but that's just sort of a consequence of the best things to do with cards that add cards to your hand are make a bunch of small ones, because filling up your board and then playing a bunch of Victoria hands is kind of the thing you do with created cards. It's an interesting incentive to note. Like, created cards are very pigeonholed by the power of Victoria hand being such that it is so much better to do that thing with them, and that thing incentivizes so heavily that you need to play smaller energy cards. And that has weaknesses, right? Like, we've talked about Victoria hand struggle with board space and things of that nature. It's all true. But it is still the strongest way to play a quote-unquote created cards deck. And this guy not going in that, because sometimes they'll give you like Gamora Drax, it's interesting. It's just interesting that it's a lot more incentivized to play a bunch of small created cards than it is to play a bunch of big created cards. And I understand why that is. I just think it's a thing that is worth being explicit about, because it will impact how good this card is. I think Kraglin might be a bit way off. And what I mean by that is Kraglin is a 3-3. This is a Series 5. This is a card that you're gonna like pay for this card. And what it says is on reveal, and it checks to see if the top card of your deck is 4 cost or higher or 3 cost or lower, banishes that card, and then gives you an effect based on what the cost was. If it's 4 cost or higher, you get +2 energy. If it's 3 cost or lower, you get +4 power. And I gotta tell you, I feel like this card does not make any sense in anything. I could be way off base about this guy. Like, I just want to say, if you're doing something that requires +2 energy on turn 4, like you want to play this into something, it is because you want to do that to get something specific, right? You want to be galactusing them. You want to do something incredibly specific. The actual text on your cards matter. There is not a lot of fungibility. Your cards are not replaceable. This is a card that banishes the top card of your deck, which means that you're making your whole deck around these cards that are not replaceable and then saying, look, if it happens, I guess I'm going to lose. And it's not even the best way of getting +2 energy on the turn. Like, you could just play Wave. That's a 3-6. This is a card that is either a 3-7 or Wave. And Wave exists. Like, this is you can play Luna Snow. You could be Electro. You could do all of this other stuff. But instead, you're going to play this? I don't see it. I just don't see it with this card. I don't think the premise makes sense. I don't think this card is strong enough. I don't think I can think of a world where I would want to do this, even if it wasn't banishing. Like, okay, if it wasn't banishing the card, I would at least play it in a Galactus deck. That's what I'll say. If it wasn't doing that, I'd play it in a Galactus deck. Now that it is doing that, I have no idea if I'd play it in anything. And I really wonder about this card, because when I look at it, I'm like, you know, okay, maybe a year ago, but you've made so many strides, and you here being the Marvel Snap design team, in making ramp cards just have bigger bodies, that it just doesn't feel right for this to be 3/3 plus 2 energy. I'm supposed to go out of my way for 3/3 plus 2 energy. I don't know, dude. Like, if this were a 3/6 and it got like +2 on the other end of it, then this card would be good. But I'm looking at 3/3 plus 2 energy, and I'm like, I don't even want to hit that. I don't want to do that. And I think this guy is going to be one of the stinkers of the month. Jack Flag, 3/3, ongoing. Your cards with increased power here get +2 power. They've done a lot of buff synergy stuff. It's interesting, though, that buff synergies have largely been about one big buff and then passing that buff on. So Maverick, namely, the card being centralized around here. This card wants you to be a wide board buff kind of thing, much more of a Silver Surfer card than a sort of Sholau Maverick kind of deal. I think that that's fine. It's not a bad space to be in. And I also think there's a piece of this card's text that people are missing, which is it doesn't say other cards. It just says cards, which means it should count itself, because that's an ongoing effect. So instead of being like a 3/9 or whatever, this is a 3/11, which is a little bit better than it would be if it wasn't, you know, affecting itself too. I think this is a reasonable card. I just don't know that it actually fits with what the decks that do all these buffs are actually about. It's clear they've been willing to lean into buff synergy. And I think something like the new Shang-Chi is actually probably a really important card for this guy specifically. But I don't know exactly how good he's going to be. I think he's probably going to be bad. And this guy seems like the kind of thing that if there aren't enough things to make you want to be a wide board buff deck as opposed to a tall board buff deck, this guy's going to have less homes than you would want him to have. I mean, obviously, I do like the idea of just slapping him behind a Captain Carter and being like, let's go, right? Like, that does work. But it's like, do I really need another thing that's going to win my Captain Carter lane? No, what I actually want to do with Captain Carter is put a Maverick behind her so I can get extra buffs to win other lanes, right? I don't know about this guy. I think that Surfer is probably the worst card in a lot of Surfer decks at this point. And we kind of are at a point where I'm not 100% sure this guy is actually good, which is crazy because he is like a 3/11 if you put like the minimal work of putting him in a full lane and playing Silver Surfer in. But it just doesn't seem like that's what we're about. The card is powerful. I just don't know if he fits right now. Almost a little bit Lin Lee-ish, where I think Lin Lee's a pretty strong card, but some of the stuff that he's asking of you doesn't fit exactly right now. This card feels a little bit like that, although I think he's a little more straightforward, a little more obvious, and probably a little more powerful. Starhawk is a pretty interesting card, and on reveal that changes based on what turn it is. On odd turns, it buffs the cards at the left location. On even turns, it buffs the cards at the right location. In each case, it is +1 power to each of the cards there. I would imagine most of the time you're playing this card on turn 6 and buffing the right location by +4. Like, that would be my instinct for what this card is actually doing. Probably 55% of the time, number made up, pulled straight out of my ass, but you get what I'm saying here. Mostly this is probably going to be doing that. Obviously, this is like one of those things where you're like, you look at a Jack Flag and you're like, there aren't enough things that incentivize me to do a wide-based board buff strategy. Here is a card that incentivizes you to do a wide-based board buff strategy. Like, this is a card that very clearly wants to go with that. It seems really reasonable for a 2/2 that does all this stuff. I think this card is probably pretty damn good. When I look at this card, I think this card has a ton of synergy built in. You can use it basically at any time. It's one of those things that decks are missing out on, is a good enabler for the smaller boost stuff. Right now, everything is about big boosts because we don't have cards like this. We don't have cards that enable the small boosty stuff to accrue value, turn over turn, or even just to get a couple of procs on something, right? This does let you do that, and it is actually interesting, and it's a cool design that encourages people to really actually think about where they're playing their cards and plan out for the future. Honestly, I think this might be my favorite card of the month. It might not be the best card of the month, but just all the things that it's doing are cool and strong and interesting and encourage forethought. And I have nothing bad to say about this guy. I really like him. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I have been KMBest. You have been phenomenal. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.